We're talking today about finding percents mentally. Normally, this would be a significant topic, okay? We would take a couple of days, and we will still, because it's kind of an important real-world thing to be able to do. But it's really hard for me to test on this, because if you're at home and the test says you're supposed to do these things mentally, what's to prevent you from sitting there with a calculator and getting the actual answers with the calculator, right? So very hard to assess this when you're not sitting in front of me, and therefore we probably will not have any of these types of questions on a test, except for maybe that you need to explain how you would do it instead of actually just getting the answer, okay? So there are lots of sort of mental rules that you can use to find percents of a number, okay? Remember that percent is always out of 100. That's what percent means. So if you're asked to find 100% of a number, that should be pretty simple. It's just the number, right? 100% of $55, and I'm going to use all money in this problem because the most common place that you use percents is with money. It doesn't have to all be with money, but all these examples are with money. 100% of $55, Giancarlos. $55, right? Pretty simple. 100% of $180, $180. Okay, that's a gimme. All right, now, the 10% rule. To find 10% of a number, right, one-tenth of the number, you basically just divide this number by 10. Now, what is the easy way to divide any number by 10?
Use a calculator.
No, Rachel. Move the decimal point one place to the left. Okay, or if there's a zero, you can just drop off a zero if there's a zero at the end. Okay, so 10% of 48 is 4.8. 4.8. So 10% of $48 would be $4.80. 10% of $700, Miles? $70. Okay. So the 10% rule is really the most useful one, because if you can find 10%, and it's very common that you get lots of different percents with the 10% rule, because once you find 10%, you can then multiply this, which we'll talk about later. Okay, Rachel, could you do me a favor, please, and sign on the Chrome box?
I couldn't.
Thank you. Keep forgetting that I want to be able to see people, and I will ask you all to show your cameras here at some point this morning, so I know you're there. All right, 1%. 1% of a number is that number divided by 100. 1/100th of the number, okay? So dividing by 100, it's really just dividing by 10 twice. You do the same thing. You move the decimal point 2 places, or you drop off 2 zeros off the number. So 1% of 94,000, take off 2 zeros, 940. 1% of $17,
Nothing.
well, it's a pretty small number, but
Zero.
it's not zero.
You moved the decimal by
0.17.
0.17, 17 cents is 1% of $17. Yes? Oh, you're stretching. Okay, so 100%, it's just the number. 10%, move the decimal 1 place. 1%, move the decimal 2 places. Okay, so those are pretty straightforward rules. Okay, sometimes you're asked to find the percent of a number that's a multiple of 100. Okay, so like 25% of 100 is 25, right? But 25% of 400, that would be just that 25 multiplied by 4. So if the number you're getting a percent of is rounded off to 100, a multiple of 100, then you just multiply that percent by however many hundreds it is. So 25% of 400 is $100, right? Because 25% of 100 is 25. 25 times 4 is 100. Probably not the best example. 54% of 300, that's 3 times 54, because each 100 would be 54, okay? Now, this multiplication here, this 3 times 54, you're supposed to be able to do that in your head. Okay, now some of you I know might have a little trouble doing this in your head. 3 times 54, 3 times 50 plus 3 times 4, that's how I do it. Yes, Giancarlos? It's 162. 3 times 50 plus 3 times 4 is 12, so 150 plus 12. Now, do you have to be able to do this?
Yeah.
Well, I can't test you on it this year, okay? But I will post IXL assignments that help you, that practice these problems if you want to practice doing these in your head. It's just if you want to get better, that's up to you, right? You'll see them again. Okay. 50% of a number and 25% of a number. Okay, so 50% of a number is
Half.
half, right? Half.
40.
So half of the number is dividing the number by 2, okay, which again, you should be able to do that in your head. 50% of 80 is 40, okay? Thank you. Look at that service, man, Mr. Flora. What a champ. Thanks. 50% of 125. 50% of 125. Rachel. $62.50. That's correct. Okay. So when you have an odd number at the end, right? So if you divide this by 2, half of 120 is 60, and then half of 5 is $2.50. Okay, that's a little more difficult, obviously. 62.50. Okay, so 50% of a number is half of the number, just divide it by 2. 25% of a number, which again is pretty common to get this problem. Okay, so it's either, you can either divide the number by 4, sometimes the number is easily divided by 4, like 160, right? 160 divided by 4 is 40, right? Because 16 divided by 4 is 4, and then you just put the 0 on the end. Dividing numbers like this, also something you should be able to do, and there's an IXL topic that you can practice these, okay? So divide by 4, sometimes that's the easier way to get 25%. Sometimes dividing by 4 isn't so easy. 90 divided by 4, like, oh, well, I don't know what that is. So instead, you can divide it in half, and then divide that number in half again. Half of a half is 25%, excuse me. Okay, and 75%, well, that's 3 of these 25%, or you can find 25% and subtract it. Okay, so 75% of $90, I would take half of $90, which is 45, and then I would take half of that, which is $22.50, and then I can subtract that from $90 or multiply it by 3 to get 75%, which is 3/4. Okay? These are a little more complicated. These two are, you won't see very often except for an IXL topic that I have for this lesson. There are some of these, so I added this one in, okay? 33% and 67% are thirds. 33 and a third percent is 1/3 of a number. So you can find that by dividing the number by 3. 33% of 90 is, what's 90 divided by 3, Colin? 90 divided by 3.
30.
30. They weren't being patient and letting you get and giving you a chance to answer, Colin. 90 divided by 3 is 9 divided by 3, and then just add a 0, right? 30. 33% of 66. Carlos.
333.
Miles.
22.
Who's talking?
Hey. I couldn't see who was unmuted there. I couldn't go about it. It was probably Tori. Was that you, Tori?
Yep.
Yep, I thought thought so. Okay. 1/3 of 66. 66 divided by 3 is 22. Right? 6 divided by 3, 6 divided by 3,
Why do you
22.
have enough threes?
What?
33, not 3.
What are you talking about?
Dog is 66 divided by 2. So it's 220 over 10.
Yeah, and then 2/3 is the same thing. You divide it by 3 and then you multiply that by 2.
Okay,
So if the number you're getting a percent of is easily divisible by 3, then you can get thirds. Okay, so this one is 270, so divided by 3, that's 90,
180.
and then times 2 is 180.
Okay, now.
Okay,
What?
this one is, this one you really don't have to know how to do, well, you really don't have to know any of these. I can't test you on them, okay? But these are very good things to be able to do when you're out there without a calculator, which is not
We
very
need a
often, probably, right?
calculator.
2/3 of 45, 67% is 2/3.
I know what 8.
1/3 of 45, 45 divided by 3 is
30.
5 divided by 3, 45 divided by 3,
15.
15, and 15 times 2 is
30.
2/3 of 45 is the same as 67%. All right, lastly here, the 10% rule allows you to find 20%, 30%, 40%, 70%, right? Any percent that ends in a 0, you can find by using the 10% rule. This is really the most important, the most commonly used one. Okay, so to find 30% of a number, you find 10%, that's just moving the decimal point, and then you multiply by 3. 6.5 is 10% of 65, and then you multiply this by 3. And again, this is that 1 digit times 2 digit multiplication that you should be able to do. $19.50 is correct. Okay, and again, if you have trouble with this multiplication stuff, I'll give you these IXL topics. I will post them in Classroom. They are optional, but they're good practice on these kinds of quick mental multiplications that you should be able to do.
What do you mean?
80% of 600, you can do it, Olivia. This one's easier. What's 10% of 600? What's 10% of 600? 10% you get by moving the decimal point one place or just taking off a 0. 60. And what's 8 times 60?
I don't know. Wait, Dude, Tori!
Tori, be quiet. I'm going to have to mute you.
That was him!
480. Okay. So you can use the 10% rule to get any percent that ends in a 0. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%, you would use the 50% rule, right? Okay, you can also use the 10% rule to get 5% of a number, because that's half of the 10%. 5% is half of 10%. So you find 10% by moving the decimal point, and then you divide it by 2. So what's 5% of 30? Terry, what's 5% of 30? 10% of 30 is 3. And then what's half of 3?
There's no half.
1.2.
1.5. So it's $1.50. 5% of $4.60. All right, go ahead.
23 cents.
Okay,
No,
what- 10%,
23 cents.
10% of $4.60 is
46 cents.
Point
four-
460.
46 cents, that's correct. And then half of that is
23 cents.
23 cents, exactly correct. Good job. Okay? So that's all the rules. 100%, 50%, 25%, 10%. Those are the ones you need to know. The thirds you really don't have to know that much. Okay? And sometimes you can combine them together. right? To get 15%, which is a very common thing to do in your head because that's the most common percentage that you use for a tip at a restaurant. Although now you can use 20%, okay? But 15%, you get 10%, and then you get half of it, and then you add them together. Mr. Vaudry's twinning with me today, too. It's just like a common theme today.
Good theme.
It is a good theme.
Stop it.
Or
Stop
if
it.
it's,
Stop it.
or if it's a couple percent subtracted from 100, you can do it that way, okay? So these are all strategies for doing these problems mentally. They're good things for you to know, okay? I can't test you on them this year.
I have 10.
So some of you are probably happy about that,
Oh, yes, I'm very.
okay? But I can ask you questions like, how do you find 10% of a number? And you don't say, you put it in your calculator,
You say, eat it.
right? How do you find 10% of a number? Olivia, how do you find 10% of a number? Move the decimal point one place to the left. That would be your answer, okay? So you'll see that on a multiple choice question probably with some other things that are wrong, obviously, okay? All right, so that is how to find percents in your head mentally, okay? Now, a lot of times though, the percents that you're finding or the numbers that you're finding percents of are not nice, round, easy numbers like this. So if that's the case, what do you do? If you want to do them in your head.
Please excuse the subtraction, teacher. Could you please submit your attendance as soon as possible?
Yeah, 3 times. Actually, twice. I missed one the first time. What?
If you want to do math in your head, you have to have a brain.
Okay, so that's a start, which everyone's good on that front, okay? Despite some people trying to argue otherwise, okay? So, to do anything in your head, okay, to do anything in your head, you make an estimate, right? And to estimate something, which is a really important math skill. It's not really a math skill, it's a life skill, but you typically learn it in math because it all has to do with numbers. Estimating is really, really important to be able to do. It helps you know that things make sense, that things are reasonable, okay? When you don't have a calculator and someone says, oh, this is what it's going to be, and you can quick in your head change that to numbers that you can do in your head and say that makes sense or that doesn't make sense, or knowing basically how much money normally you're talking about, okay? Easy numbers to use that you can do in your head. That's what you do to estimate, okay? And you should be able to, as we were talking about, multiply any 2-digit numbers like these. You should be able to multiply in your head very simply, okay? You multiply the digits and then you add the zeros. 4 times 700 is 4 times 7, 28, and then add 2 zeros. 300 times 50. 3 times 5 is 15, and add 3 zeros. Okay, same thing with dividing, although dividing is not as common. These are the more important ones. Okay? All right, so you should be able to do these pretty quick, like within a minute.
Not the 7 one.
50% of 170, Cameron.
I don't know, 120?
What?
120?
120. So half of 170. What?
85?
85 is a better answer.
I got it right.
Okay, so some of these halves are difficult, right? You do this as half of 17, which, okay, the even number right before this is 16. So half of 16 is 8, and then add a half, right? So it's 85. This is the easiest one, right? This is the easiest one, Colin. 10% of $36. Colin, 10% of a number, move the decimal 1 place.
You said 4. Please.
Yes, Olivia?
3.6.
3.6 is not money though, but that's the right answer, 3.6, but I'm gonna make this into dollars.
could be $3.06.
That's exact, not $3.06,
60
$3.60. Good.
cents.
Never mind. Miles, 25% of 80? 20. 1/4, right? 80 divided by 4.
Yay.
Oh, I forgot. I should tell you, you have to show how you get your answers, so you should write 80 divided by 4.
Yeah, he does that.
So this one,
I didn't do any of that.
170, all you gotta do is write that. 170 divided by 2. The 10%, you don't have to say how you got that one. Last one, 40% of 380. Rachel. 152. 10% equals 3.8, and then times 4. 3.8 times 4 is 120 plus 32, 152. And I'm not doing this on paper, right? 152.
Yes, you are doing that.
Kind of, okay? So that's how you do these problems. Your homework is a bunch of these, okay? So again, we talked about estimating, and that means to do things in your head. There's a couple IXL topics to do these practice multiplications to help with those. It's good practice. They're optional. I will post them on Google Classroom.
Oh, they have their option.
Okay, I'm skipping this page. Actually, I'm not skipping this page. Page 111 in your book, page 111.
You said you were skipping it.
Yeah, I changed my mind. I'm gonna go through it quick.
I still forgot to put volume 1 in here.
Okay.
Volume 2.
Write yourself an email or something, Colin. A reminder.
That's Carlos. You said Colin.
What did I say? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Colin.
Okay,
And Colin.
so the book, here's the thing. What? So the book and IXL both, they really kind of use a lot of fractions to estimate percent. When they talk about 25%, they say that's 1/4, okay? And 10% is 1/10. Okay, I typically don't talk about them as fractions very much, but you'll see that a lot in here. So it's like the actual percents, notice, the actual percents here are not easy round numbers, 42%, 32%, 26%. This is where you do estimation. Round them off. That's about 30%. Okay, 26%, what easy percent is that close to? 25%. Okay, I mean, you could have made this 30% also, but 25% is really closer, and you know how to get 25% of a number. Okay, that's an important one to know. Now the book goes to fractions, which we typically aren't going to worry about. Or maybe for this one, what's 25% as a fraction?
1/4.
1/4,
I know
right?
30% of
Everyone
a
should know.
fraction.
30% is,
8/4.
no, it's 3/10, okay? But we don't worry about this one so much because to get 30%, we're just going to move the decimal point. We're not going to worry about the fraction part, okay? So then it says to estimate each percent. We did that. And how many people took lessons? So if the beginning is out of 200 people, if it's out of 200, 40% of 200, this was used that the 100 rule, right? If it's 40 out of 100, then out of 200, it's going to be 80, 2 times this, okay? So how many people took lessons at school is 30% of 200, which is about 60, okay? About 60. And I wouldn't do this as 3/10 of 200. I would do this as, okay, I would not.
Stop messing with his computer.
I would not do that one, like they do in the book. If I'm gonna find a percent of,
Can I have a snap?
no, yeah. If I'm gonna find a percent of 200, I'm just gonna take the percent and multiply it by 2. Right, so that's 60%, 60. This one is 50, okay? So this part is not good estimating math, so we'll skip that one. Okay, so a lot of times you don't need an exact answer. Carlos, keep it to yourself. It's not lunchtime, okay? I said you could have a snack. If it's distracting you or the rest of the class, then it's not going to happen, okay? All right, got it. Sorry for that being on the video. So round the numbers off to easy percents. That's what you do. If it's 62%, make it 60% and use the 10% rule, okay? Not making fractions like they say in the book. So one of the things I want you to do in the book here is you can cross off this fraction stuff, okay? Unless it's a fourth or a half, I'm not really using the fractions. I'm going to use the rules that we talked about, okay? So 10% of 500, I'm sorry, 60% of 500, you find 10% and you multiply it by 6. So 10% is 50, and 50 times 6 is 300. On the left side there, it says, what are two ways to estimate 22% of 130? I don't even know what the book says there, okay? I say there's two ways you could do 22% of 130. I don't know what the book said. I don't know.
Divide it or you can multiply it.
No, kind of, okay. So you can round 22% to what? You can make it 20%, okay, and to find 20% of 130, 20% of 130, okay, that's this method. You find 10%, which is 13. 10% of 130 is 13, and 20% then would be 26, multiplied by 2, okay? Or you could round 22% to 25% and find a quarter. So half of the 130 is 65, and half of 65 is $32.50. Notice these numbers come out different. This one comes out to 26, and this one comes out to $32.50. So, but because you're rounding this 22%, one makes it bigger, one makes it smaller. That's why there's a difference in these. Both of these answers would be correct, which is why when you're answering a question on how you estimate something, you have to explain what you did, what your thought process was.
I would third way.
Yeah?
Google.
Yeah, or calculator, right? But that's not an estimating.
I'm not allowed to use a calculator.
Why? You're right. Okay? This goes through some 10% rule and 20% rule like we just did, these two examples. So now we go down here, 42% of 120. What am I going to do to estimate 42% of 120?
Decimal point.
There's going to be a decimal point moved in at some point. Yes, that's correct.
Multiply.
Okay, what do I need to do first?
You would change the,
No. What do I need to do first, Rachel? Yeah, first I'm going to change this 42% to a number I can do in my head. Make it 40%, okay? To find 40%, I find 10%, which I do by doing what, Olivia? Moving the decimal, so that's 12, right? So 10% is 12. And then what's 40% then? If 10% is 12, then 40% is $48, okay, or 48. Okay, that's how you do that problem.
No.
You need to write these steps down when you answer the questions. Okay, you're going to have a worksheet that's a Google sheet for homework, and it's going to ask you to show how you got your answer. So you said 40% instead of 42%. 10% is 12. And 12 times 4 is 48, or something like that, okay? Next one, Dante is putting 80% of his paychecks into a savings account and spend the other 20%. His paycheck this week was $295. How much money is he going to be saving? Okay, how much money is he going to be saving? Go ahead and work this one on your own. How am I going to find 80% of $295?
Divide.
No. What am I going to do first?
find 10%.
Right. What am I going to do first, Terry?
Take away the 0.
Well, what I did first was that I broke up 80 into 10 and multiplied 10 by moved the decimal.
Okay, so you did $29.50. Okay, that's even too hard. What could you make this number into that would make all that math a lot easier? $295 is approximately $300. So make the numbers easy, so you can do them in your head real easy.
But this isn't easy.
So 80% of $300 is what I'm going to find.
This is about how much?
Always, these are all estimates, right? If you're doing any changes at all, it's an about, you're right. If it doesn't say an estimate or about, then and I would never give you this mentally because that's a hard number. Okay. We'll learn how to do these with a calculator on Thursday.
We need to know how to do it in a
That-
calculator.
Wait, Mr. Rose, is 80% of, what's 80% of 295? You know, do you know?
29.5 times 8 or 295 minus $49, right? Because $49 is 20%. Did you get $49? 2295 minus 49 is 246. 246?
I got 252.
I got 237.
All right, hold on. I'll do it in my calculator. So if 10% is 30, right? 10% is 30, then 80% is 8 times 30, which is $240. Okay? So the answer is about $240.
I'm putting 240 right there.
I got 237 for the.
That's very close, right? That's a perfectly good answer if you can explain how you did it.
I just did the 20% and then whatever was left.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Wow, that's a cool looking cow.
$236 is the exact answer.
That's what I said.
$236. But to do that without a calculator
I did it.
It's over.
is a lot of work.
I don't know.
That's okay.
That's why we need to calculate.
Well, part of so one thing is if you want exact answers, you use a calculator. But if you don't want exact answers, then you need to just be able to explain how you can do it in your head.
I want easy.
Okay.
So
All
what
right.
you do is you.
One more thing to talk about here, and that is, what about if the percent is bigger than 100 or less than 1? Carlos?
Then you don't divide, you.
Well, you always, there's always multiplying or dividing depending on what percent you are finding,
Yeah, but
okay?
if you want to check.
So here's the thing, if it's more than 100%, if it's more than 100%, your answer is bigger,
So that.
right? So you're gonna find 100%, which is this number, and then you're gonna add the amount that's above 100%. And you can estimate that too, right? So this one, 122%, we'll say it's about 120%, okay? So 100% is 50, then plus 20% of 50, and again, we don't use this fraction piece here. This is not what we're gonna do. We're gonna do the 10% rule. 10% of 50 is 5, so 20% of 50 is 10. So the 122% of 50 is approximately 60,
61.
right? 50 plus 10, 100% plus 20%.
Approximately $68 to
60, oops,
$64.
okay?
Oh, dang, I should have.
It's $64.
Wait, what page are we on?
113. Okay? 174% of 200. When I see this 200, I just think I'm gonna multiply the percent by 2. Because that's what it's gonna be. If the number you're finding the percent of is a multiple of 100, then you take the percent, 174, and you multiply it by 2. Now, that's not the easiest thing to multiply by 2, but it's 200 plus 148, 348. 2 times 100 plus 2 times 74. That's what I would do for that one, okay? Or you find 100%, which is 200, and then 75%, divide by 4 and multiply by 3, that's 150. I know I'm going through a lot of these things quick,
Yes,
That's
don't
because the
understand.
people that can follow, it's for you. If you can't follow, that's okay.
I don't understand
It's
this.
okay, don't worry about it.
I was stressed so much.
300%, so 298% of 45, I'm never gonna do 298%, I'm gonna round that off, I'm gonna estimate that to be about 300%. 300% of 45, what's the easiest way to do that? 300% of 45, well, what's the only way to do it?
Well,
Multiply 45 times 3, and you get what?
it's one,
45 times 3.
oh, it's 135, I think.
135. 45 times 3 is 135. 3 times 40 plus 3 times 5. 3 times 40 plus 3 times 5. 347% of 80. Wow, that's a big one. Colin,
Yeah.
what am I going to do to get 347% of 80? No. First, I'm going to change 347% to what? 350%. I'm going to make it easy numbers. 350%. Okay, how do I get 300% of 80? 300%.
Oh, I know, you just do 80 times 3.
That's correct. 300% means it's 100% times 3. So 3 times 80 is 240 plus another 50%. What's 50% of 80, Colin?
It's $280.
50% of 80. 50% is half. What's half of 80? 80 divided by 2. 40. So it's 3 times 80 plus 40.
It's 280.
280 is correct. Okay, 300% is 240, and 50% is 40, half, so you add them together, 280, okay?
But there's not enough room in our books to
You only really need to write the answer, okay? All right, lastly, what if the percent is less than 1%,
What?
okay? Like a quarter of a percent or 0.6%, less than 1 out of 100.
What 1% of what?
Okay, well, whatever the number is. So this one says there's 789 seventh grade students. That's a big school right there. 789 seventh grade students. And about a quarter of a percent of them, 1/4%. That's less than 1/100th, right? A very small number. A quarter percent of them have traveled overseas. How many students traveled overseas? So in these problems that are less than 1%, the first thing you do is find 1%. I know,
And the bell ringing.
okay? So 1%, and we'll make this number 800, so the math is easy. 789 is about 800. 1% of 800 is 8, right? 1, divide by 100, remove the decimal 2 places, drop off 2 zeros. So 8 would be 1%, and then you, now to find a quarter, all right, well, that's just 1/4 of 8 divided by 4, which is 2. Okay, so the answer is 2. 2 kids out of 789 have traveled overseas. That's a very, very small amount, right? Less than 1/100th of them. 3/4 too hard. I'm going to skip that one.
Yeah, it's really hard.
This one's a good one. Last year, 639 students went to a summer camp. Of those who went this year, 0.5%, 0.5%, also went last year. That's not very many, okay? So 0.5% is half of 1%. Half of 1%. 1% is about, well, you could make it about 6.4, or just say it's about 6. Okay, and half of 6 is 3. So the answer is about 3. These estimates, you can make the numbers as easy as you want. That's why you have to explain how you get your answers. Because if you just write a number and you don't explain how you got it, then I really don't know if you know what you're doing. Okay?